He'd built rockets, changed the world, and defied every belief, until the moment he stood in church and said, "I can't do this alone anymore." With millions watching live, Elon Musk surrendered to something no algorithm could explain. What happened next sent shockwaves through the world, and might just change yours too. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. Grace Community Church buzzed with a strange, quiet energy. It wasn't the usual Sunday morning chatter. It was something else. Anticipation, maybe. A sense that something unusual was about to unfold. Outside, 3 black SUVs pulled up slowly to the side entrance. No fanfare, no reporters shouting questions, just a few discreet security guards stepping out and scanning the perimeter. Then Elon Musk emerged. He wore a plain dark suit with no tie. His hair was slightly tousled, and his face looked pale, thoughtful. He wasn't here as a billionaire or a tech icon. He was just a man walking into church, with questions written all over his face. Pastor David Wilson stood at the door waiting. When Elon reached him, he extended a hand. "Thank you for coming," the pastor said gently. Elon shook his head, almost apologetic. "I don't know why I'm here," he murmured, "but something's happening. I can't ignore it anymore." They walked side by side down the hallway toward the sanctuary. Inside, the congregation had already begun to gather. People whispered but didn't approach. Elon moved quietly to the front row and sat alone, his hands resting on his knees. As the worship music began, he kept his eyes locked on the wooden cross. He didn't sing, he didn't move, but something in his gaze started to change. Haunted, curious, as if he saw something no one else could. The camera crew adjusted their equipment quietly in the back. The service was about to go live. Millions would be watching. Elon didn't seem to notice the cameras. He sat still, almost frozen. And then, something subtle shifted in his posture. Just a breath, just a moment, but something inside him had started to move. Pastor Wilson stepped up to the podium, the sanctuary falling into respectful silence. His sermon began as planned, something about purpose, calling, the ache that lingers beneath achievement. But 10 minutes in, Elon Musk shifted in his seat. His jaw tightened, his hands gripped his knees. Something inside him was clearly stirring. Then, quietly but firmly, he stood. He leaned toward the pastor and whispered, "May I speak?" Pastor Wilson, surprised, simply nodded and stepped aside. Elon walked slowly toward the front, his footsteps echoing through the silent sanctuary. He turned to face the congregation, eyes scanning the room, then landing briefly on the camera in the back. His voice shook as he began, "All my life I've lived by logic, science, evidence. I've built my whole world on things I could measure or explain," he swallowed. "But lately, I feel empty." No one moved. "For the first time since I was a child, I prayed," he confessed. "I didn't expect anything to happen, but something did. I felt something, a presence, a peace I couldn't explain." He looked down for a moment, then back up. "I know it was real." And just like that, the man who built rockets began to speak about God. He stood there, still catching his breath, his eyes locked onto him. Not as a CEO, not as an icon, but as a man unraveling. And in that pause, Elon Musk offered something he never had before. His backstory, not of business, but of burden. "I've spent my life building things," he said, voice quieter now. "Labs, factories, rocket ships, launch pads for humanity. From Silicon Valley to Cape Canaveral, I've lived in the future, always one idea ahead, always building forward." Images flashed through the minds of those listening, The polished stages of product launches, the roaring engines of Falcon 9S, the cold precision of AI labs. But then Elon's tone shifted. "What people don't see are the nights," he said. "3 months ago, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, surrounded by silence. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that feels like a void." He looked down. "I prayed. For the first time in decades, I actually prayed. Not to make something happen, not to fix anything, just to be heard." The sanctuary didn't stir. Elon glanced toward the cross again. "My mom once told me, even a brilliant mind needs a place to rest. Back then, I brushed it off." His voice cracked slightly. "But now it sounds like prophecy." The silence in the church deepened, not with discomfort, but reverence. Elon took another breath, steadying himself. "I thought I could solve everything with intelligence, but the smarter I got, the lonelier I became." And then, with a trembling sincerity, he confessed the truth that had haunted him for years. "I've built systems for the world, but I never built peace for my own soul." A long pause followed. Then, softly, "And maybe that's what brought me here." Musk had always engineered the future, but somehow he'd forgotten to tend to his own heart. Elon took another shaky breath, gripping the sides of the podium like it was the only thing grounding him. "I need to admit something," he said, his voice steadying slightly. "For most of my life, I mocked faith. I called it a crutch for people who couldn't deal with reality. I used to believe that religion was for the weak, for people afraid to face the unknown." He looked out at the silent congregation. "I thought logic and data could explain everything, that if we just advanced enough, innovated fast enough, we could outthink death, outrun fear, fix the human condition." A long pause. "But what if I was wrong?" The words landed like a thunderclap in the sanctuary. What if my certainty was actually blindness? The room held its breath. "I remember one night not long ago," Elon continued, his eyes distant now. "I was at home. Everyone had gone to bed, and I just broke. Everything in me cracked. The pressure, the exhaustion, the weight of being expected to always have an answer." He glanced at Pastor Wilson, then back at the crowd. "I shouted at God," he said. "I actually stood in my kitchen and screamed, 'If you're real, then show me.'" His voice cracked. "Just a little. I wasn't trying to be poetic. I wasn't hoping for magic. I was just lost." Another pause. And then something happened. He took a step back from the microphone, visibly shaken. "I didn't hear a voice, no visions, no angels, but I felt something." He placed his hand flat against his chest. "It started here. It felt like a weight being lifted, like, a fog I didn't even know was there just cleared." His voice trembled with awe. It made no sense. I tried to analyze it, to break it down, but it didn't fit any formula I knew. It defied science, but it healed something inside me. He looked directly at the camera broadcasting to millions. "I know how this sounds. Believe me, if I were watching, I might think this was all fake, but it's not." Tears filled the eyes of people in the front rows. Pastor Wilson bowed his head silently in prayer, hands clenched. "I used to think I could save the world," Elon whispered, voice lower now, as though speaking to himself. He looked down, the words came slower. "But now I know." He glanced up, eyes red. "I can't even save myself." And in that confession, quiet, unpolished, undeniable, something broke open. Elon stood quietly for a moment after his final words, staring into the silence. The sanctuary around him was still. No music, no whispers, just hearts hanging on his next breath. Then he spoke again. "You know," he said slowly, "surrendering control is the scariest thing for me." His eyes were glassy. My entire life, I've believed that if I could just think hard enough, build fast enough, plan far enough ahead, I could solve anything. I thought control was the key to saving humanity. I thought it was the key to saving myself. He paused, swallowing. But that night, in my office, alone, I felt like I'd come to the end of myself. He looked out at the congregation. The room was dark. Everyone was asleep. My heart was racing. I couldn't make sense of anything anymore. I dropped to my knees, and I just whispered, "God, I'm yours." The words hung heavy in the air. I didn't know what it meant, he admitted. I still don't know what it means. But I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Peace. Not victory, not achievement, just peace. A tear rolled down his cheek. "I don't have all the answers," he said again, his voice cracking. "But I believe God does." Pastor Wilson, standing nearby, stepped forward gently. "Elon," he said softly, "would you like to make that commitment public? Right here, right now?" Elon didn't answer at first. He just nodded. Slowly, solemnly. His whole body trembled, but he didn't look away. He turned slightly, facing the wooden cross at the front of the church. The camera zoomed in as he took one deep breath, then another. "Millions of people are watching right now," Pastor Wilson said quietly. "But this isn't about them. This is between you and God. If you want to pray, just use your own words. Speak from the heart." Elon stepped toward the center of the stage, his eyes closed. His lips moved, but no sound came at first. Then finally his voice broke through the silence. Shaky, soft, but sure. "God," he whispered, "I've spent my life trying to prove I'm enough, trying to be the answer. But I'm not." He paused. "I've denied you. I've mocked faith. I thought it made people weak. But now I see it takes more strength to surrender than to control." He opened his hands slightly, palms up. "I don't know what comes next, but I want you to lead." Then, with the weight of the world watching, Elon Musk bowed his head, not to technology, not to science, not to power, but to grace. And everything changed. Elon stood at the front of the sanctuary, his hands trembling slightly, the microphone gripped gently in his right hand. The lights weren't glaring. There was no performance. Just a moment, a real, raw moment. He looked toward Pastor Wilson and gave the faintest nod. The pastor stepped forward, placed a comforting hand on Elon's shoulder and said, "Just speak from your heart, no script. God's listening." Elon closed his eyes. The room fell completely silent. Online, millions were watching as the stream carried this moment across time zones, screens, and hearts. "God," Elon began, his voice soft but clear, "I don't have all the words. I've never done this before. But I know now that I need you." His chest rose slowly as he took a breath. "I've spent my life building things, rockets, cars, systems, empires, but I can't build peace. I can't invent meaning. I can't create forgiveness. I need you for that." His voice cracked. "So today, I surrender, not because I figured everything out, but because I finally realize I never will without you." People in the pews bowed their heads, some already crying. "I accept Jesus as my Savior," Elon continued. "I don't fully understand it all, but I believe He's the truth I've been running from. And I don't want to run anymore." He opened his eyes and looked straight ahead. "I'm yours." A soft gasp spread through the congregation. Some clasped their hands over their hearts. Others simply wept quietly. The sound wasn't loud, but the room was full of reverence, as if the air itself had changed. Online comments flooded the live feed. "Elon Musk just gave his life to God." Never thought I'd see this day. Crying right now. This is so real. If Elon can surrender, maybe I can too. The hashtag Elon surrenders began trending globally within minutes. Elon stepped away from the pulpit, his body light, almost unrecognizable from the guarded figure who had walked into the church just hours before. After the service, he sat quietly in a back room with Pastor Wilson. The two men didn't speak at first. Elon just looked down at the Bible, now resting in his lap. Finally, he broke the silence. "I should be panicking right now." Pastor Wilson raised an eyebrow. "Why do you say that?" Elon laughed quietly, still dazed. "Because this moment is going viral. My team is probably in crisis mode. I just committed my life to God on live TV. Everything's changed." "Do you regret it?" the pastor asked. Elon shook his head. "No," he said, almost in a whisper. "That's the thing. I don't. I feel peace, like something inside finally stopped fighting." Pastor Wilson smiled gently. "That's what Scripture calls the peace that passes all understanding." Elon looked up, eyes misty. "I've led people into the future. But right now, I think I just found the present." His phone buzzed on the table beside him. Missed calls, dozens of messages, news headlines already flashing across the screen. He didn't touch it. For the first time in years, he wasn't rushing to manage the story. He didn't need to. The truth was enough. The world outside buzzed with opinions and alerts, but inside that quiet room, Elon Musk had found stillness, and millions were watching. Elon Musk sat quietly in the corner of the room, his eyes locked on the glowing screen of a tablet Pastor Wilson had just handed him. Message after message scrolled by, thousands of them. Some were from longtime skeptics, others came from scientists, professors, even self-proclaimed atheists. "You made me think for the first time in years," one message read. "I never thought I'd hear someone like you say that," another confessed. "I cried watching you pray. I'm an engineer. I never believed. But now I'm wondering if there's something more." Elon blinked slowly. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't expect this," he said, as if confessing to the room, or maybe to himself. Pastor Wilson leaned forward. "Your story just preached to the unreachable," he said gently. Elon shook his head slowly. "I thought people would mock it, dismiss it as weakness." "Some," the pastor admitted. "But others? Others just saw someone who built the future stop and say, 'I need something more.'" Elon looked back down at the screen. The flood of messages hadn't slowed. "This one's from a teenager in Poland," he murmured. "She says she never told anyone she's been doubting her own worth, and watching the live stream made her feel like maybe she matters." He set the tablet down gently on the table. "What is this?" Elon asked aloud, not really expecting an answer. Pastor Wilson didn't hesitate. "It's the ripple of obedience. You took one step, God is multiplying it." Elon rested his elbows on his knees and looked down at the floor, his thoughts moving faster than any prototype he'd ever built. For years, his entire identity had been wrapped in solving problems: climate change, space travel, artificial intelligence. He had chased the biggest questions of science, but tonight, he realized something far more personal. Maybe the biggest breakthroughs didn't always happen in labs. Maybe they happened in hearts. "My platform," he said slowly, "was never just about innovation. Maybe it was always supposed to be about hope." The pastor smiled. "Then maybe God just gave you a new kind of launch pad." Elon chuckled quietly, a rare sound, almost boyish. "A bridge," he whispered. "What if I'm supposed to help build a bridge?" He looked back toward the tablet, the words still flowing, the story still pouring in. Scientists, artists, young parents, wounded pastors, all saying the same thing: "You made me feel again." And as Elon sat there, surrounded by nothing but messages, memories, and the quiet hum of something eternal, one thought rose above all the rest. What if the man who built rockets was also being asked to build a bridge, one that reached not to Mars, but to God? And maybe, just maybe, he had already begun. The hallway outside the sanctuary was hushed, yet alive with something reverent. As Elon stepped out, people stood along the walls, young and old, dressed in Sunday best or jeans and t-shirts. No one held a camera. No one asked for an autograph. Instead, one by one, they whispered things like, "Can I pray for you? You help me believe again. Thank you for your courage." Elon paused, overwhelmed. These weren't fans. They were fellow travelers, souls walking the same uncertain road toward something higher. A boy of no more than 10 stepped forward, clutching a small wooden cross. "This is for you," the boy said quietly. "My grandpa gave it to me when I was scared. He said it helped him be brave." Elon took it with both hands. "Thank you," he said softly, voice thick. "I think I need it." Outside, the black SUV waited. He climbed in, shutting the door behind him. The car pulled away from the church, headlights cutting through the night. Inside, Elon's phone buzzed with chaos. Headlines, tweets, streams of praise, ridicule, awe, disbelief. Elon Musk gives his life to God. Live on air. A turning point for a generation, say experts. Faith and future trends globally. He stared at the screen for a moment, then powered it off. Silence returned. He looked out the window. Trees blurred past. A full moon hung above the hills like a quiet witness. Elon spoke barely above a whisper. "Maybe I've finally launched something worth following." He turned, pulled out his personal phone, and typed a message to his mother. "I'm not broken. I'm finally healing." He hit send, then leaned back into the seat and closed his eyes, not to escape, but to rest. And somewhere between the silence, the moonlight, and the warmth of a wooden cross resting in his palm, something sacred settled over him. This wasn't the end of a journey. It was the beginning of a much greater one. For the first time in his life, Elon Musk wasn't racing toward the stars. He was walking toward grace, and millions were walking with him. The next morning, before the headlines faded and the world moved on, Elon sat alone in his home office. Sunlight filtered through the windows. A quiet stillness filled the room, not the emptiness of isolation, but the fullness of peace. On the desk before him was a single photograph. It had been captured by one of the camera operators just before the live stream ended. In the image, Elon stood beneath the wooden cross at Grace Community Church, his head bowed, eyes closed, and the faintest trace of a smile on his face. No fanfare, no spotlight, just a man in stillness, at peace. He saved the image to his phone. Then, in the caption box, he typed 12 words. Not a mission launch, but a soul surrender. He pressed post. No hashtags, no links, no edits. And with that, he turned off the screen and walked outside, barefoot in the grass, his son X waiting for him by the garden, with a question already in his eyes. As the camera fades, you're left with a quiet reflection. Have you been chasing answers in the noise, searching through success, distraction, or control? Maybe it's time to pause, to step back, to sit in the silence, and let peace speak first. Because sometimes, the most life-changing answers don't come from pushing harder, but from surrendering completely. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you pause for just a moment longer than usual, we invite you to be part of this journey. Subscribe now for more inspiring stories of redemption, faith, and the unexpected moments that remind us what truly matters. Because there's something extraordinary about the human heart when it finds its way back to hope. Sometimes, the most powerful journey isn't the one that takes you to Mars, the boardroom, or the next invention. Sometimes, the most powerful journey is the one that brings you home. And like Elon Musk, maybe you'll find that the greatest launch of your life doesn't go upward. It goes inward, and it changes everything.